Welcome to South Pacific Rural, where we explore rural life in New Zealand's South Island. Welcome to South Pacific Rural, where we're almost the shortest day. We're about 3 days off the shortest day of the year. We're in June, can't remember the exact date. And this is Lake Waihola. Smallish lake, quite shallow, in Otago. And this is State Highway 1. But this is not why we came here today. We're going to show you around a reasonably typical New Zealand wool shed. The wool shed is used for shearing those things over there. Sheep. Not the children, sheep. In New Zealand, we call in America what you would call a corral, we call yards. We have sheep yards and cattle yards. And these are what we call covered in yards. Or covered yards, where you have everything's under cover. You can work with your stock during rain events and so on, or you can use it to help keep stock dry for shearing. Shearers don't particularly like wet stock. Now before we go in, you'll notice that the main wool room is above ground level, and we have sort of a stage here. Now that's on purpose. It serves two purposes. One is so that the floor level is the same height as a truck deck for handling wool bales. The other is to allow for sheep to be able to stand underneath, so extra capacity for drying sheep. That's under the wool room. You can't keep the wool under the grating though. We'll show you what grating is in a minute. So this is a reasonably typical shed. Like I said, I think this was built in the mid to late 70s, I think. This is what we call a raised board shed. That stage up in front of the boys, that's where the shearers stand, and it's a 3-stand shed. So 3 shearers will shear here at a time. This is just the wool room where you'll store wool bales, and also shearers might relax on the chairs perhaps. This is a no tramp wool press, and I think this could be owned by the shearing contractor, this particular one, but I'm not sure. And so this here, when the wool is shorn, you put the wool in here and you fill up this chamber here, and this whole plate here comes down, pushes the wool down, and these fingers here help keep the wool semi-compressed. Then you raise it again and you put more wool in, and you put more wool in, and you keep doing that until it tightens right up, and then you'll put your staples in your bag and your fadge, which is these large. There's no full ones here as yet. This is a fadge. These are empty ones. They're large sacks, very large sacks indeed. And hopefully we'll get a chance to show you. This is a standard wool press, which is a tramp wool press. You fill both sides. This side has the fadge already set in it. You fill both sides. You have to tramp it with your feet. Tramp it as much as you can, and then this side gets flipped over on top of that and it all gets pressed down, and then the hooks are put on the fadge and you have a wool bale. So there's a bit more labour intensive to use this type of wool press than to use that wool press. It's one man operation, well, that can be 1.5 sort of men. There's my children. We also have these frames here which will hold empty wool fadges for your odds and sods, your top knots, your skirtings, and maybe even dags. They'll sort out the fleece on the table here. They'll gather up the fleece and they'll flick it out, and all the small half-cut pieces of wool will fall between the gaps in the table and help keep all the short little offcuts out of the main fleece. You want to keep the fleece nice and clean. You want to keep it clear of second cut wool and so on. And so you get a good team in here. There's a shearing plant here. So you have there's 3 shearing plants here, and so there'll be 3 shearers, and depending on how the gang's gone, there'll be probably at least 3 rousies, maybe 2, depends on how they shear and so on, how the gang structures themselves, and it just depends on how they do things. Sometimes some farmers will supply a labourer of their own to help the gang, and so it can vary how many staff are used in the wool shed during shearing. So I'll just come in front of here. So in here, this is one stand. So this door here is where the shearer will go into the catching pen. You just see the grating underneath with a sheep stand in there. So that's your catching pen in there. The shearer will go in there, catch a sheep, come in here and will shear a sheep, and then when the sheep is shorn, we'll go down that chute underneath the shed. And then at some stage will be let out into the paddock. So each stand, as we call it, has its own catching pen, its own chute and own machine. So that's a stand, that's a stand, and that's a stand. It's a 3-stand shed. And the stands are up on a stage to aid in picking up the wool. It means not having the rousies, the rousies are the ones who pick up the wool and sort the wool. And with it being on a stage, they don't have to bend over, and it makes it a bit quicker. Later designs of sheds had a U or C-shaped stage, so that the walking between stands would be less. And I've worked in a 6-stand shed that had a U-shaped board. So, but yeah, probably a real good rousey should do all 3 shearers just about, I'd say. It's been a while since I've worked in a shed. Another thing which is a crucial part, it's not used during the day, but this is a shearing grinder. Now it's a flat steel disc with a large piece of sandpaper glued to that steel disc, and that is used for sharpening the combs and the cutters that the shearer uses on his handpiece. There's a I forget the name of the thing. There's a thing that hangs off this here, comes down here, and it's magnetically holds on the cutter with a couple of 2 little prongs, and you hold it on here and you go zzz, and there's a lot of sparks, and it will grind the combs and the cutters nice and flat. And it's imperative that these papers, as we call them, the sandpaper paper, is glued on, stays glued on. That one's starting to come away a wee bit, and that it's nice and flat. The papers have still got nice good grit, and there's no bubbles underneath it to cause any troubles. If it gets bubbled or anything like that, you have to take it off, re-glue on a new paper, and that is done. It has another plate through the other side there. That plate through there is purely used for pressing on or compressing the paper onto the steel disc when the gluing process is going on. We probably won't get to see that being used, but that's a crucial part of a shearer's tools. Most shearers will have their own grinder at their house as part of, if they're a full-time shearer. Oh, there's the, I've just spotted the doodacky. This is what you use here. Hooks on here. And the combs and cutters. The combs and the cutters go on. They've got two holes in them that go in these holes here where my fingers are. And there's also a magnet in there, and you just hold it there and you and grind up your gear. Very important piece of equipment for a shearer. So I've been in the shed when the sheep have been shearing's been going on, but it's been sometime I was just about these boys' age actually. The shed is owned by friends of ours. Now in here, this is only a relatively small area. We have the main catching pen, and then we have sort of a race along the back to feed the feeder pens that will feed the catching pens. Now this shed has got some quite cool technology of the day. These feeder pens can actually swing both. Doors can both swing both ways. You demonstrate for me, Gavin. You turn it that way and then come back. Bring it back this way. So that gate can go backwards or forwards, and then it can also go up. Can you pull the door up? Can you lift it up, Gavin? See, it can be lifted up. It can be lifted up over sheep. If there's sheep packed in there, the door can be lifted up. I'm pretty sure there was weights on that. It was a weighted system, but doesn't appear to be at the moment. Here we got the some of the wires that used to be on the weighted system, but so this is the grating. This here wood about 2 inches by 1.5 inches in height, but they have one square side and one angled side to give a better gap underneath. And this is so when the sheep are in here that when they relieve themselves, it'll go underneath the shed and not create too much of a mess in here. So this is sheep grating, very important, and it runs this way to help when you're pulling the sheep out, because once you pull the sheep over onto its rear end, you'll pull it out on its backside, and it's nice to have the grating going with you so that they can't fight against you. So here we're looking into the covered yards. Covered yards are used for a lot of different things through the year other than shearing. This is a drenching race where you'll drench a sheep you put a drench gun down its neck and give it some medicine to stop to kill worms and so on. Might be vitamins or something like that. But so this is the big race along here. You're bringing sheep any which way. They might come straight out from outside into the back, then up this wide race, up this ramp that the boys are playing on, and into the shed here. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to show you some live shearing. This is supposed to preview the shearing. We'll see how we go. So yeah, this is the inside of a pretty standard New Zealand wool shed of the 70s or 80s, yeah. As far as shearing equipment goes, this machine is a Heinegger, and Heinegger and Sunbeam. Heinegger is a European brand and Sunbeam was an Australian brand. I believe Sunbeam has since got out of shearing or gone under. I could stand corrected there, but yeah. This particular shearing motor was one of the top shearing machines at the time, right through the 70s and 80s, and so yeah, what a shearer likes is good consistent speed of his handpiece, and yeah, good high speed, no surging or anything. And these have a weighted flywheel, and see there's quite a bit of weight in this steel flywheel. You give it a spin and then you turn it on, and yeah, this is a clutch mechanism here. This whole unit here has got there's a fibre disc in here, and this here thing, when it gets engaged by this string here, comes out and connects with the inside of that. Right, so I'm going to get my son Gavin to demonstrate what happens when you pull the string. So you watch carefully. Pull the string, Gavin. Pull it, pull, pull, pull. There, see it goes out. Now pull it, let it go up, Gavin, and pull it again. You see that gap there open up, and that's the clutch for the handpiece. So here we have some of the ewes that the farmer was going to shear. These were here to dry, to get them dried out for shearing, but unfortunately we've got drizzle today and the sheep haven't really dried out, so it's really back to square one. A ewe is an adult female sheep. You have two-tooths, which are 2-year-old sheep. You have hoggets, which are 1-year-old sheep, and then you have lambs. And then of course you have rams, which are the males. Unless you're growing wool as your main business, you won't really have wethers. Wethers are neutered sheep, you might say. They're its, and large merino wool producers, very fine wool producers, will run mobs of wethers, but not, these are crossbred, these are strong wool sheep. Mainly the wool is, well, at the moment there's no money in wool at all, so their main income is the lambs that are sold for meat. But usually the main market was always meat, and then that was probably 2/3 your income, and then 1/3 was usually your wool. But now it seems to be pretty much wool is almost, in most cases, is almost costing the farmer to take it off the back of the sheep. And there is some farmers who are moving away into sheep breeds that don't need to be shorn, because the wool market is so bad in these times. As I'm recording this is June 2021, so there doesn't seem to be much change in the wool market at the moment. Well, it's the 25th of June 2021. Nice still morning, but overcast. The weather finally improved enough over the last couple of days that the farmer was able to get his sheep dry. Can be a problem. You don't want wet sheep. Shearers don't like wet sheep. Rousies don't like wet sheep. Nobody likes wet sheep. It's extra weight in the bales that you don't need, and yeah, you just don't like wet sheep. So the gang's here. You can hear their music, and we're going to have a look at some shearing sheep in New Zealand.
Unfortunately, due to copyright, I have to do quite a bit of voiceover with these pieces, as the shearers love to either have the radio going or some kind of music. Typically, it was my experience in the past that shearers usually started at 7:30 in the morning and would have they'd have 4 2-hour runs with half-hour breaks between them and an hour for lunch, finishing at 5:30. This varies a bit from gang to gang, but these guys have been going a bit earlier. I think they started at 7 this particular morning. So the shearers are well underway, and had been for half an hour or more when I arrived. As you can see, there's actually 3 rousies this particular day, one for each shearer. Rousie is short for rouseabout. They're the people who work with the wool directly. So in this particular gang, this particular day, we have 3 shearers, 3 rousies, and 1 penner impresser. And the penner impresser, he alternates between pressing the wool and creating the bales of wool and looking after that side of things, and keeping the catching pens full of sheep for the shearer. So if he's well onto it and a capable chap, he'll run between the two and will keep everything going very smoothly. But if he gets behind and the shearer runs out of sheep in his catching pen, you would hear him say, "Sheepo." On this day, when I was there, that never happened. He was just a young guy, but been doing it for quite a few months, I think a year, I think he's told me, and he was right onto it. So the shearers always had full catching pens and could keep up. Now the typical shearer, a good fit shearer will do around the 300 ewes a day, if in good conditions, and it can vary from day to day depending on the condition of the sheep. Some sheep will be what we call sticky, and they'll be very their wool won't have, it's quite hard to explain if you've never been in this environment before, but the wool is very greasy, and it can gunk up your comb and cutter and make it harder to go to shear. But also the wool can be quite has a certain thickness at times, quite close to the skin, and makes it quite hard to push. And sometimes when the sheep has gone on to good tucker, they get what we call a bit of a rise in the wool, and it creates a bit of freer space in the wool, and the wool is a lot the fibres are freer and more uniform, and you can really get going. It would really take a shearer to really explain it in depth. I myself have only ever shorn about 23 sheep in a day, which is nothing compared to these guys. You don't even get a job in a shearing gang unless you can shear 200 a day. So that's the sort of starting criteria. Westy here at our immediate right is just finishing his what we call the back blows. He's coming up onto the head, finishing the head and the neck. And as you see, as he's shearing, he's pulling the sheep back gently, and that exposes the sheep, well, keeps the sheep close to the shearing machine's downpipe, because he's limited on the board where he can be by the downpipe of the machine. He's just finishing off there, and he has 40 years experience, this guy, and the chap down the other end, Wayne, he's got 42 years experience as well. Now here's Westy getting ready to shear a sheep. You might have noticed he tucked the leg, the right front leg, behind his leg, and that is so he's squeezing the sheep with his knees to hold it. There's many things going on all at the same time. What he's actually doing with the handpiece is only half what he's doing. I was always told by older shearers learning to shear, watch what the shearer's other hand's doing rather than what the handpiece is doing. All those other things, the way he's holding the sheep, is keeping the sheep calm, keeping the sheep controlled. And you'll see as he shears, he's moving around in a sort of semicircle. See, he's brought the sheep right round, and part of that is that he's keeping the piece of the sheep that he's shearing parallel with the shearing plant, because he's limited by that downpipe where he can be. Now I've got the shearer's towel getting into my view there, but as you can see, there was a wee bit of a sticky bit there, but apart from that, but he's very fluid and has good technique, and that's one thing that'll set apart an older shearer than a younger shearer. A younger shearer just tries to plough on with his brute force, where an older shearer will use his skill and his technique to get him through the day and make life easier for him. You notice the sheep was kicking as it was coming out. He said, I don't like this, I don't like this. See, he's tucked the leg in behind his leg. He's got the sheep settled down. It's in a settled position. It's going, oh, this isn't quite as bad as I thought it was. Because essentially the sheep is just getting a haircut. It's no different than you or I getting a haircut. Unless he gets a cut or a nick, it doesn't hurt the sheep at all. He'll thank the shearer for it later. You'll know when the sheep does kick, that's when he is in a bit of discomfort. But you'll notice that Westy will change his leg position or his hands, and it'll settle the sheep. The sheep will feel secure, held and settled, and that is a big key to keeping the sheep calm, keeping things fluid, and being a gun shearer, as we say in the trade. If somebody's a top shearer, we're talking about being a gun shearer. Well, that was the term that was used at one time anyway. I assume it still is. But you'll see here the rousey is, with having a rousey for each shearer, she can come in, just take off any short bits of wool, and just control where the fleece is. She's even trying to help out by pulling the cord for the shearer where she can. Got the other rousey there just tidying up afterwards. Westy's going in for another sheep. He curls back the head to naturally, so that the sheep just sort of falls backwards onto his backside, and it's all very fluid. He's not trying to fight the sheep, he's trying to work with the sheep. So he starts off by crutching the sheep, and he's going round the crutch. He does one blow around the crutch, up the leg, down the leg, into the backbone. Then he does a bit more of the crutch. Now we also do crutching which is just the crutching for hygiene purposes and so on, sometimes of the year. You notice he did quite a blow up the backbone. That was for later. That's the top knot he's just done, taken off the top knot. Now he's going to open up the neck, opens up the neck, does cheeks there, comes up the does a few blows up the neck, around the back of the head. He's swinging the sheep round, keep the sheep parallel with his downpipe. Then he starts into what we call the back blows, up the side of the belly, and gets into the big long blows right up the back of the sheep. And you'll see, because he'd gone up the tailbone, there was quite a bit there that he didn't have to do down near the tail, around the back of the face, down the other side of the neck, and he finishes off on the right hand side of the sheep. And these blows, as he heads down towards the back leg, can be fairly long blows too, which help get it done quickly. Arouse his back again, sorting the fleece, keeping the fleece in one. She's going to pull the cord for him. Now we're out the back of the stand, and the penner and presser is filling up the catching pen. Shearer always likes his pen kept full, and it's good when he doesn't have to doesn't get held up by an empty pen. I know I was guilty of that sometimes if I got run off my feet pressing. I was always running back to fill up an empty pen, and the shearer getting annoyed. But you'll see the feeder pen is of equal size to the catching pen. You see there he's slid the gate up, and it can go both ways, which is really handy. And yeah, he's just keeping the sheep up to the shearers, and that's the important thing. He'll empty out the top here, and then we'll have to bring up sheep from the covered yards, and that'll be the next task for him. Right, so now we're with Chris. He's pulling out his sheep, and gets the sheep tucked behind his leg there. Starts opening up the crutch there, down the back leg, cleans up the crutch area, up the tailbone up into the back, does the top knot, opens up the neck, there's the cheek there, then he goes to hold onto the ear, control the head, around the back of the head, and then he's holds onto the front leg while he's controlling it, and all the time bringing that sheep round so it's parallel with the downpipe. It's got a wee bit of double cut there, which we want to try and avoid, but not always. Sometimes when you go blind up the back, you don't always make contact. Down over the shoulder, and just see he's got the sheep's head between his legs, so he's just controlling that sheep. Sheep's like, oh, I don't know about this. Then he just settles it down around the leg. But he holds on around the neck there with his legs, and that's what's controlling the sheep. And you see it all worked out good. That sheep, well, it wasn't the best example for us to show you, but just shows you what can happen. That still was a pretty a decent job. I've seen a lot rougher than that. He's as good as any shearer out there. If you have a bad behaving sheep, it can make even a good shearer look not very good. We see he's just this sheep's a lot more settled, and yeah, it's right up into the backbone there. Does the top knot, comes in to open up the neck. Oh, it's a bit sticky there. Opens up the neck, does the cheek, goes for the ear, holds the ear around the back of the head, over that front shoulder, grabs the front leg again, just controlling the sheep, holding the sheep. That sheep's well settled there. He's quite happy, you see now. Up the back there, bit of discoloured wool there. as you can see, might have been rubbing against the gorse bush or something. Quite often they get a grey colour to their coat if they've been rubbing on big old gorse sticks and so on. And this just shows you, the difference between one sheep to the next sheep. It's quite a respectable job on that sheep, and all it was just the other sheep was doing a bit of kicking, a bit of bad behaviour, and down the chute it goes. And that'll happen to anybody through the day. You'll have your good sheep and your bad sheep, and sometimes you'll have a bad run of a couple at a time. And these sheep here too, one thing I hadn't noticed on the day, but these sheep had been bellied, so you'll notice even when he does the crutch there, it's very short wool. So at some stage in the past, they'd been bellied and crutched, and this is to stop them getting mud on the underneath. Right, now we're with Wayne. Wayne's been shearing 42 years. He's got an old looking ewe there by the looks of it. He's getting well into it there. You'll notice there's always slight differences between each shearer, how their technique and so on, but it's still the same thing is achieved. Up the back, taking up the back blow there, around the head. Now there he didn't have so much wool to do because he'd open up the neck a wee bit differently than say Chris in the next stand there. But the same desired effect is going. Now this style that shearers shear sheep, there was in the early days of shearing, there was other ways of shearing a sheep. They would start in different places. I've never seen any of them. But this style that these shearers use nowadays, and I think all shearers throughout the world pretty much use, I think with a few exceptions in different countries, is called the Bowen style, named after Godfrey Bowen, and he invented this shearing style. He revolutionised the shearing industry, sped up shearing no end. So it had quite a bit of crutching to get there. So yeah, you'll notice just different styles and each shearer, how they go about things, how their technique has progressed over the years, how they do things, and it's quite interesting just to watch actually as an observer. Explaining this all, there's some things I didn't really notice on the day that I'm noticing now through watching the footage, just little differences and so on. Yes, it's all the same end result, but just a bit different technique. In New Zealand, we've also made shearing into a sport, so you can shear competitively, and there's world records that have been created and broken, and these shearing competitions are not just for the shearers, they're for the rousies as well. There's competitions in wool handling and prizes, and it's all to do with helping build the industry, keep the skill level high, incentivize people to do a good job, and there's a few industries like that in New Zealand where we've created competitions around to help with skill level and competition. But if you ever want to look up a very famous shearer who's created all sorts of records, you could look up Sir David Fagan. David Fagan, as he was known when he started creating all the records, he held all sorts of records for shearing, ewes and lambs, I think. Great numbers of sheep, in the hundreds per day, and he was just recently, in the last few years, knighted for his contribution to the shearing industry, and is very well known in New Zealand and around the world for his shearing abilities and his record-breaking runs that he's done. Some of these the competitive shearers that really take it super seriously, they train like an Olympic athlete. They do a lot of shearing. They shear for a job. They also will go to the gym and so on and keep fit and do running and all those sorts of things that and eat right like any other competitor would do. So yeah, it's quite a big sport in New Zealand. So here we're looking at the Rouseys. Unfortunately, they're such busy people, I didn't actually catch their names that particular day, I'm sorry to say, but makes them no less important. The shed just simply can't function without them. What we're going to do here is go around to the press. The presser is getting ready to take the bale out. He's just this is what you call a capless pack, and this wool fadge is it has big ears, or big like an envelope, I suppose, on all four sides, and they're held out of the way, and then at this time when the bale is full, he uses steel clips to close it on both sides from both directions. He'll have a steel hook. It's in his hand, and we'll show you in a minute what it looks like, and just grabs these hooks. Now the benefit of using steel hooks in the for holding down the bale, holding the bale together, is that they can be magnetically taken out of the wool in a processing plant at any time when they're going along, when the wool is going along a conveyor or being handled in any way. And the old wool fadges used to be a cap. Well, these are called capless, and the old ones had a cap, and basically the cap was just one big square of the same material, and it went on the top paddle, and at the end it was pushed down and then sewn on all four sides, sewn in with a twine, with a hemp twine, and that was how they were closed up till the early 90s, I would say. Maybe around 92, 93 they were starting to be phased out for these capless fadges. Here you'll see him handling the wool bale with a big hook, just like Captain Hook would have, I suppose. Quite a dangerous sort of a hook, but very essential, makes it a lot easier to deal with the bale. You see there, he just slides it around, and that's how he grips it. They're very, very slippery. These fadges, they're a nylon of nylon sort of construction, I think it is, and very slippery. Back in the old days too, before they went capless and went to these more modern fadges, they had hemp, jute fadges made out of jute, or Americans may know it as burlap. Now the burlap, or the jute, was very strong and did the job very well, but the trouble was that the fibres could come off it and contaminate the wool, and no one wants contaminated wool with other fibres. It's like any other type of product. You don't want a If you're growing seed, you don't want other seeds in with your, so you're growing wheat and you're selling wheat, you don't want barley in with the wheat. It's the same with wool. If you're selling a wool fibre, you don't want a burlap or jute fibre in amongst your wool. So it was a great thing when they were phased out. These more synthetic packs seem to be longer lasting. They don't shed the fibres the same. They do tear from time to time, and you may see older ones that have been stitched up and repaired, but are far superior to what we used to use. You'll see here too the pipe, the stands made out of steel pipe holding these loose fadges, and these are for the offcuts and bits and pieces. They're basically the byproducts of the shearing process. You see her picking up these short bits, throwing them in there. Now that chap there, he's the boss of the gang. He's come for a visit. He's just thrown out the fleece. Girls are going there, and she's going around the edge and doing what we call skirting, and taking off any dirty short wool, and that's thrown to a separate bin there for later processing. And that's because they're trying to look for a good uniform length of wool, so any short bits or dirty bits need to be separated. So here we've got 3 different bins here, and see here, this is what we call tramping the wool. She'll tramp it down tight, and I'm pointing there with my finger showing that that's what she would do, and that's what you normally would do with that wool press, that older wool press. So you'd have to tramp it just like that, but quite a lot more often and a lot more vigorously, and you'd tramp both sides and fill both sides up with wool, and then you'd swing the top over and then press it down and create a bale. A bit more laborious than this no tramp press behind her there. And here is the hook for putting the clips on the wool bale. It's purposely just made like this, so it's not a dangerous tool like the hook for handling the bales. Just try and make it safe and cheap, I suppose. And here's the hook for handling the bales. Just a single prong hook. Sort of something you want to keep out of the reach of children, but it's a very effective tool and much needed. You can get 2-pronged hooks, although they aren't so common nowadays from what I've seen, but no, they're a wonderful thing for and pretty essential really for this job.
Right, so this is what you call your comb and your cutter. This is your cutter. This is replaced quite frequently through the day. And this is your comb. Now this is actually what you call a cover comb. It has little spaces here to rise it off the skin of the sheep and leave a bit of extra wool on the sheep for winter time, keep them a bit warm. This is a used one, and we see it set up on this year's handpiece. These will be ground and resharpened quite frequently over their life, and they're quite expensive to buy. What are they? About $40 a comb? What's a comb worth nowadays?
At the most $40. Heineken are about $40.
Yeah.
Those ones are about $30.
Yeah, $30 for a comb and what, 20, 30, 25 for a cutter, is it?
No, it's about $5.
$5. Oh, okay.
Those ones are about $9. The cheap ones are about $5, but
Yeah.
they range from $5 to $9.
$5 to $9 for a cutter. Yeah, and the handpiece is around $1,000, is it?
Yeah, I paid $9.30 for that one.
$9.30. It's for Heineken, is it? Yep, Heineken.
Yeah.
So all this stuff is owned and maintained by the shearer himself, and then the shearing plant is owned by the farmer. Now I've just been told too, also this machine here, made by Heineken, is quite, sounds like quite an intelligent machine. It can detect hard pieces of material in the wool and can automatically shut off. And it's quite a good safety device by the sounds of it.
Also, as I was walking around the shed, I discovered these old hand shears. Now, this is what was used back in the day before machine shearing. These particular ones are the short style ones, and these were made for crutching. The ones for shearing were quite a bit longer, but that's the old days. Robert was just telling me that these single stripes on the sheep's back denote that these sheep are expecting a single lamb. It is a big thing nowadays in sheep farming to pregnancy scan your sheep so that you can manage your stock more effectively. So it's far more preferable if the sheep was having twins. We don't really like them to have more than twins. It becomes hard for the sheep to manage any more than 2 lambs. The sheep only has 2 teats, so can only really effectively feed 2 lambs. But it's a big winner for a sheep for a farmer if he can produce twins in every single sheep, because he's essentially selling sheep for meat. Also, Robert was telling me that the different coloured ear tags denote age groups. So every year the lambs get a different coloured ear tag. So you got 4 tooths, 5 tooths, 6 tooths, and the oldest ones are probably 8 tooth sheep. But there'll be not so many of the 8 tooth. You wouldn't keep them that long unless they are real top ewe. One thing while we're recording this and showing you this farm and shearing is, unfortunately, this is the last time that Robert will be pre-lamb shearing his sheep. This farm has been sold, and a fair majority of this farm will be planted out in commercial forest and will no longer be farmed for sheep. And so it's with a bit of sadness that we make this video, and we're very pleased that you've come along and watched it, and we hope that not only will educate people who are not familiar with sheep farming, but that it'll also be preserved as a piece of history for the last time this family pre-lamb shore their sheep. I should touch on too quickly that pre-lamb shearing is done at this time of year. Obviously, by the name, it's done before the lambs come. These ewes all expecting young lambs. It's done for a couple of reasons. Ease of handling, because the sheep are on their own, got no lambs to worry about. We'd do it with a cover comb to rather than a standard comb, to give them a bit more cover than normal so that they won't freeze in any cold weather. But they're also, one thing I was always told years ago, that pre-lamb shearing takes that wool off, and then so when the ewe has her lamb and there is bad weather, she will feel the cold as much as the lamb will, and then will go and seek shelter to look after her lamb and herself by default. So that is some of the background to pre-lamb shearing in the lower South Island of New Zealand. And thank you for coming along with us on this journey, and thank you for watching South Pacific Rural.